The FIA is in big trouble. They're receiving hits left and right. But nothing hit bigger than what Verstappen had to say after the FIA's latest power trip. In the midst of his swearing incident in Singapore, Verstappen issued his latest warning that the way Formula One is run may shorten his time in the sport. But how concerned should F1 and the FIA be if the Dutchman really walks away? And have the FIA just made a gigantic mistake regarding free speech in the sport? As a triple world champion, Max Verstappen is used to being the focal point of attention on a Grand Prix weekend. But in Singapore, the Red Bull driver caught the spotlights for the wrong reasons, caught up in a controversy with the FIA over swearing in the Thursday press conference. The saga began with an interview with FIA President Mohammed Ben Sulayem, in which he urged the F1 to go further in eliminating swearing from TV broadcasts. And when Verstappen described his Red Bull car as FD on Thursday, the governing body punished him with community service, which both he and his colleagues found unbelievable. But this was only the start. In his customary rebellious attitude, Verstappen staged a protest with purposely blunt replies in official FIA news conferences, only to organise his own media meetings where he freely answered any and all questions outside of the FIA press room. Verstappen's actions were more than just a display of his rebellious bravado and youthful attitude. There was a genuine undertone of dissatisfaction and bitterness with how it had all played out, and he felt drivers were being muzzled rather than being allowed to express themselves freely, at least to a reasonable extent. When you can't be yourself, you have to deal with these kinds of silly things. I'm at a stage of my career where I don't want to be dealing with this all the time. It's really tiring, he said. Of course, it's great to have success and win races, but once you have accomplished all that, winning championships and races, then you want to just have a good time as well. Everyone is pushing to the limit, but if you have to deal with all these kind of silly things, for me, that is not a way of continuing in the sport. That's for sure. It's a barely hidden threat to leave the series, which seems unusual for a well-paid 26-year-old who has dominated his discipline, won 3 world titles, and might be on his way to rewriting history. So, how seriously should F1 take Verstappen's retirement announcement? And should they make amends quickly before it's too late? It is worth noting that Verstappen has already stated that he does not intend to stay in the sport indefinitely. After winning his first World Championship in 2021, he has already declared that he has no desire to chase Lewis Hamilton's records or compete in F1 for the sake of it, and the transition to a 24-round calendar and sprint races has further diminished his enthusiasm of being a part of the globe-trotting circus. "I'm not a fan of it at all," he stated when questioned about the sprint format at the start of last season. "I think when we're going to do all that kind of stuff, the weekend becomes even more intense, and we're already doing so many races. We're heading into seasons where you have at one point 24, 25 races, and if we then start adding even more stuff, it's not worth it for me anyway. I'm not enjoying that." He also expressed reservations about the status of the 2026 rules, and the driving qualities of the new machinery influenced his decision to extend his Red Bull deal until 2028. Verstappen may come out as spoilt, throwing a tantrum when he doesn't get his way, or is smacked on the wrist, but the reality is very different. Other drivers may have handled the series' increasing demands better, but it is worth noting that Verstappen comes from a racing family. His triumphs have propelled him to the status of worldwide superstar, although reluctantly. This is the guy who, after qualifying on pole at Imola, hopped on iRacing to assist his sim racing teammates win a 24-hour sim race, and who is already planning to create his own GT3 squad and participate in the Le Mans 24 hours, ideally as far away from F1 as possible. Verstappen shows up only to race and win, and he puts up with all of the extra bullshit, as he calls it, until he has had enough. And, in his opinion, the FIA's censorship and handholding, such as Ferrari's Carlos Sainz being penalised for crossing a live track after his qualifying crash, are the newest ingredients tipping the scales as he nears the end of his 10th season in the championship. When I saw it, even like getting noted, I'm like, my god, what are we doing? These kind of things are just, for me, super silly. We're not stupid. There is the issue of Verstappen's long-term contract with Red Bull until 2028. But even if there are no brake provisions that may allow him to join a rival team, F1 is too all-consuming for Red Bull to keep a driver who no longer wants to be there. But we're not there yet, and it's anticipated that private negotiations between the Grand Prix Drivers Association and the FIA can assist to alleviate the sting of this unfortunate occurrence and find a solution. But even then, FIA have once again reached a boiling point with some drivers. "I don't know how serious they will take that kind of stuff," he said, on whether or not his protest would be taken seriously by the governing body. "But for me, at one point, when it's enough, it's enough. Everything will go on in Formula One without me. It's not a problem, but it's also not a problem for me. So it's how it is. If you can't really be yourself to the fullest, then it's better not to speak. But that's what no one wants, because then you become a robot, and that's not how you should be going about it in the sport." To me, and to many other, it sounds like Verstappen is almost at a breaking point. And if Red Bull continue to falter down and other options don't open up, he could be gone in the next couple of years. And this would be a huge bummer for the sport, but also for Mercedes and Toto Wolff, who have been looking to sign Verstappen for years already. Could they miss out due to the FIA's incompetence? If it's up to Toto Wolff, it won't get that far as he begs for subtlety. Toto Wolff, Mercedes team principal, has called for a civilized response to the current swearing debate, following the FIA's punishment of Max Verstappen for using a swear word. Wolff described the time he and Ferrari team principal Fred Vasseur were summoned in front of the stewards for using foul language in Las Vegas, but said that more subtlety was needed. "I was at the stewards last year after Las Vegas, and it was quite an enjoyable experience. Fred and I were there at the same time. He was a bit more worried," Wolff said. "I said to them, it was the first time since school that I was called to the headmaster, and I promise you, it is going to be the last." Having said that, I think there is an argument that big swearing and being rude on the radio is not something that should happen. If it is so bad, it is disrespectful. Towards the other side of the line, there are people at home watching it. The F word is common language now, but it is always the context that makes it. We want to have emotions, we want to have raw moments, and we understand that the drivers are in a state of extremes. But if we can dim it down a little bit, then that is good for all of us. But I wouldn't necessarily ban the F word, because I think there is worse and worse words than that. I don't think that using the F word in a press conference is the worst thing. But, okay, if we need to adapt, all of us adapt our language, including team principals, then we will look at it more. It is more civilized like this. Red Bull team boss Christian Horner went on to say that the matter might have been handled differently, believing that a solution that avoided the same backlash would have been more appropriate. He denied asking Verstappen to tone down his swearing in the car, stating that the distinction should be between media sessions and in the car. "I think Max has made his feelings clear on it," Horner said. "Of course, all these drivers are role models, but language that's used in everyday life, I think it would have been perhaps better dealt with slightly differently, which would have avoided any awkwardness." I'm not sure how much he's talking in the FIA press conference now, but I assume it's relatively little. I suppose the difference was between a press conference and in the car, but for a driver who English is not his native tongue. We've seen members of the royal family telling photographers to take a fucking photo, so reactions need to be relative. The question is if the FIA will also take note of this and change their approach. If not, they might have set off a chain reaction they don't like. What do you think? Have they gone too far? And are they pushing out one of their best drivers? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below.